Hello, YouTubers, and welcome back to another episode of The Grandstand here on the Ohio Patriot Education Network YouTube channel. I am, as always, your host, AR the Ohio Patriot. And sorry, I just realized my mic was on a different setting then. Uh, but welcome back to another episode of The Grandstand. I think I mentioned that. As always, we'll talk about what we want to talk about today. For today's episode, actually, in particular, we're going to talk about AK Nation News' panel that's currently going on right now. And I don't know how long it's going to go on for. But a portion of it that I watched a little bit ago, here's what it was. Because the one guy on the panel, that was basically AK Ock, whatever the guy calls himself there, it was him, and then it was two dudes. The guy in the middle, who was obviously a white guy, and then this other kid named Sebastian, who I think was either white or Asian, I'm not sure. But either way, I came into it like a little bit late or whatever, and I noticed they were talking about like basically prison gangs is what it was at the time, because I guess this Charles guy that was on the panel had done a bunch of time in Texas State Prison is what it was. I think that's what he was saying, or some prison there in Texas, what it was. And then he was discussing like the different nuances and everything else like that, and he was making some good points. But then he started talking a bunch of shit on white people is what it was, and then proceeded to mention how he currently lives in Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm just like, wait a minute now. Now, granted, he rightfully called it a shithole, which it is, just like every other Democrat held pocket in this state. Whether it be Cincinnati or Columbus or Dayton or Toledo or anything else like that, dude. They're all crime-ridden hellholes is what it is. All run by Democrat mayors, Democrat city councils is what it ends up being there. And I don't know if it's because the people there just don't know they have another choice to vote a different way is what it is, or what it is, dude. But they just keep voting for the same jackasses, and they keep voting in worse and worse people every time around is what it is, that are always Democrats for the past, 20, 30, 40 years of my life, basically is what it is. But anywho, what I thought was very interesting, and this is stuff we're going to talk about right now, and this whole thing is my take on this whole thing, this Charles guy. So, this guy's talking a lot of shit for a guy who, legitimately, from what I understand, did at least 10 years of his life in a penitentiary for basically robbing some old woman. I think that's the way he said it, or robbing somebody anyway. I'm not sure if it was an old woman or not. But yeah, it's like the dude was dumb enough to get caught. So he's obviously not the sharpest tool in the shed. You did a stupid thing, you got caught, you did your time, obviously. Don't know if the guy's still a private person or not in this state of this country. You know, honestly, I've said it before, I'll say it again when it comes to gun ownership in this nation. I believe, honestly, if you have truly done the time for the crime you committed and you're actually able to come back into society and you're not like a violent nut job that's going to be a repeat offender and stuff like that, you should have all your rights restored immediately, is what it is. The biggest problem I have, though, is that's not what our system currently is. What we have is we have this revolving door of criminality in this country where, maybe you'll give somebody 10 years for something and then they'll be out in like 5.5 or 6 years or something like that because of good behavior, because of, overcrowding of prisons, because of all the illegals coming into our country, et cetera, taking, spots in the prison. I mean, hell, especially down in Texas there and like other border states and stuff like that. Like half the fucking prison population in those states is illegal aliens. And it's like, bro, like that's a huge problem in of itself right there. It needs to be solved right now. And it could easily be solved with like, mass deportations and like permanent exile from this country is what it would be then. So anyway. But yeah, the whole point I'm trying to make is though, and I agree with what this Charles guy was saying about like different things and stuff like that. And I did agree with him on a couple of things, obviously, and he was basically saying to Ock about how not every, minority he's met in his life is a piece of shit, really. Like some of these guys were stand up guys, is what it was. Obviously, they're still prisoners in that case because he was talking about dudes that were all in prison together. But again, just because you did a crime and you went to prison for it doesn't mean you're not, still good at heart, is what it is. And I agree with what he's saying on that one. Because that's the thing, right? Like I've met good people in my life of all walks of life, is what it is. And I've met some really shitty white people, honestly. The thing is, I'm not going to sit there and shit talk an entire race of people, especially when I am that race of person, because that just makes you a hypocrite, douchebag, anti-white racist, is what it really does, dude. So anyway, it is what it is. But the entire point I'm trying to make though is when you have people trying to pigeonhole shit like that, and I think what Ock's whole point was he was trying to make with the other dude on the panel, what it was, the Sebastian guy, and Sebastian got it. It seemed like, and it was based. And there was a few other people that jumped in here in the last half hour or so is what it was on the panel then. And I think what the problem was is that this Charles dude was trying to basically bring a different perspective to things. And I kind of tried to do that myself when I was on that one time. I was basically like, yeah, not all, because I was actually on that panel twice. The one time I really didn't get a chance to talk much because I would jump in like the last 5 minutes or whatever it was, right before they finished up. And then the other time I was like there for probably like 10 minutes or something. And I was just in that particular night they were talking about something with crime statistics or something like that. And I brought up my own, obviously being robbed here is what it was. And I was bringing up the point that, obviously there's a big difference between, major cities in this country where you have a lot more crime in them of all races versus, rural areas where, we are more, depending on the state and stuff, we are more heavily armed out here is what it is. And we're not going to put up with that shit is what it is then. So, you know, it is what it is. But, yeah, and then of course, I forget who it was on that panel. I forget what the one guy's name is. He's the Latino guy is what it is there. Which, by the way, like I said, I was on that panel twice. The first fucking time I was on that panel with them dudes, that dude's first fucking question to me was, "What race are you?" And I'm just like, "What the fuck? Like, what the fuck does that matter, dude? Like, seriously, like, what the hell kind of racist ass question is that to be asking someone?" And like the first like minute you fucking know them, then it's just ridiculous. What it is. And then he was the same one that was basically talking shit the second time I was on there and brought up the other stuff then, but it's whatever. But yeah, going back to what I was saying with this Charles guy, that was what it is. You had him basically discussing the difference between himself and then obviously this Sebastian kid who is like 24 or something. I think he's the way he said he was. And then this Charles guy was like 40 and stuff. And was like, oh, different lifestyles or different lives or whatever. And then Sebastian called him out and then it was like, yeah, I'm not stupid enough to, do crimes and get caught for it, is what it is then. And I think Sebastian brought up the point of like, sort of staying with your own or living with your own or basically being with your own is what it is now. On the racial divide is what it would be then. Which I'm kind of in between on that one, honestly, personally, because it's like, again, I feel like there are good people from all walks of life, all, races, colors, creeds, etc. But then there's definitely like a lot of shitty people in general, is what it is then, that are no matter what just gonna be, more into a crime lifestyle is what it is, etc. there. And I think that's the problem right now that people don't understand is what, when we're trying to make those whole things and you get why, there are certain areas of a country or certain areas of a nation or whatever the case be, or entire nations for that matter, that won't let, certain, people come into them as immigrants or whatever, then there's a reason for that. And it's the exact same thing we're seeing overseas right now with, UK and stuff like that being invaded like crazy. And then you have countries like Poland that are like, nope, fuck that. We ain't letting people in here, man. We already saw what happened to y'all's country over there. Fuck that shit. Go the fuck away. Stay away from us is what it is. And I don't disagree with that, honestly, in some cases, dude, because it's funny to me, too, going on that particular tangent for a minute here. You ever notice how, and this is something people are starting to notice, too, by the way, and of all, again, backgrounds now, is that the only countries that are having these mass migrations to them are technically white European nations? Interesting, isn't it? That you don't see Africa having a bunch of, white Europeans being sent over to it or a bunch of Middle Easterns being sent over to it or anything like that. No, it's just a bunch of people of all those, backgrounds and stuff like that being forced upon the United States of America or different parts of Europe, etc., etc. And it's a globalist push, is what it really is, dude. It's a globalist agenda, legitimately, it's 2030 agenda in action right now, trying to destabilize our first world nations, what it is. It's why you have an open border system right now on the U.S.-Mexico border currently, because they want to basically turn a first world nation that is the greatest nation on earth right now, with literally, bar none, the greatest book ever written. And I will say that without fail when it comes to the U.S. Constitution, dude. Because the U.S. Constitution, in my opinion, is the greatest book ever written. Well, actually, maybe second greatest, because technically the Holy Bible would probably be the greatest book ever written. And then, obviously Constitution would make a very, very close second would it be then. But you could potentially just stack them on top of each other and be like the greatest books ever written, and that would work too as well. But anyway, the entire point is that you have people that want to live free, and you have people that want to exploit nations, and you have people that are telling people, "Oh, come to these nations, you can exploit." Shut up, is what it is, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now from these NGOs that are run by George Soros and other Bilderberg members. Is what it is there is you have these people that'll sit there and try to destabilize nations. What it is, hell, there was a woman who a bunch of years back now was in the early 2000s, I believe. I forget her name was offhand, but basically she was discussing back then about them trying to destabilize nations back then is what it was, like right before 9/11 is what it ended up being then. And it was essentially her saying like, oh yeah, it's like this whole grand conspiracy thing is what it'd be then. And they were talking about how they were going to do it there in different parts of like Britain and the UK and stuff like that, and then eventually into America is what it'd be then after the fact. And they succeed in a lot of cases. There's a reason why. What's funny to me too, by the way, is people always bitch about the quote unquote gun crime here in America or gun violence here in America, but yet they never talk about the crazy ass knife crime over there in the UK where they ban guns and knives at this point, or the fucking people walking down the damn street and have acid thrown in their fucking faces and shit like that. And there's a crazy acid attack every X amount of time is what it is then. And that's the problem right now. And that is an issue where they're just blindly ignorant to a lot of that stuff is what it is. And so they won't actually admit that's going on because they either A, don't know about it, or B, know about it but are willfully ignorant to it is what it is, and want to sit there and act like it doesn't happen is what it is then. So I don't know. One thing I thought was interesting too, and this does go back to something I do want to mention in this episode, which is something I've talked about. Obviously I'm running for office here next year is what it is. We actually make it to 2024 without anything happening now. Because I definitely think we're on the cusp of a second civil war right now, breaking out any time, especially like later this summer or early fall is what it'll be then. But anyway, one thing that people never seem to address as a root cause of a lot of the issues in America and other countries for that matter is fatherless homes. I will actually talk about that constantly because it is the truth. It is very much a root cause issue, both here in the United States and overseas for that matter. It's not having a dad in the household or having, the absentee fatherism, whatever it be, if it be, dad dipped out on mom before she was, while she was pregnant, before she gave birth to you and stuff like that, or whether it be, dad went off to prison and stuff like that and is now doing, 10, 12, 15 years for whatever then, or hell, life imprisonment for murders would be then. And what's funny to me is that Charles guy, going back to AK's panel there, brought up the fact that you had the different iterations of essentially criminals in the penal system there, where you had these what I would call old timers at this point, or the OGs, whatever you call them there, the older inmates who were down, like been locked down for 15, 20 years already is what it is, or even longer than that, maybe back to Biden's 94 crime bill, basically, maybe a life imprisonment for weed kind of charge or something like that. And so you'd have these dudes in there for 20, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, whatever it is there, and they would be neat and tidy, obviously, because they know what it's like to be basically, hey, this is my home now forever, possibly, or at least 25 to life is what it would be then. Versus these young guys coming in that are some of the most filthy motherfuckers. And I think the way he was saying it was, it's of all races across the board, which does not surprise me at all as well on that one, because that's the one thing, again, going back to the whole fatherless homes issue, is it's not a white thing, it's not a black thing, it's not an Asian thing, it's not a Latino thing, dude. It's all walks of life. There are fathers missing across the board right now, and a lot of it has to do, number one, with hookup culture in this country, and has been for decades, basically. Number two is the incentivification of government being the father now. And that's something that's been going on since at least the 1970s, when they started doing, oh, you're a single mother household. Oh, okay. There's no dad around. There's no man in your house, whatever the case be. Okay, we can give you, X amount of dollars in these food stamps now. And then eventually it became, oh, we can give you X amount of credits on your card for your EBT now. Because that's what, obviously, food stamps became, electronic benefits is what it was. It's actually electronic benefit transactions, I believe is what it actually technically equates to, is the EBT thing there. But anywho, the entire point is, though, they basically incentivized multiple generations of females to not have guys in the house is what it was. To be single mothers, to be dependent on the government is what it is. And when you look at it from that perspective of things, it makes sense why you have so many of these young guys coming in there and doing crimes and getting into the prison system then, and basically being, career criminals would be then. It's because they had no basis in their lives as young children to have a father in the house or have a father figure in their lives at all, for that matter. Because you would have or if they did have a father figure in their lives, what's it going to be? Oh, it's the local fucking drug dealer on the corner now making this fucking, 5-10-year-old kid a fucking bag boy for them to go sell their fucking drugs and shit. And yet, meanwhile, that asshole's holding all the fucking cash, so that he's not going to get busted with the drugs. It'll be the kids getting busted with the drugs, or it'll be the teenagers getting busted with the drugs, and they're going to go down into juvenile courts and do time. Well, this asshole fucking skates by, even though it's him that's the damn kingpin of the whole fucking operation, is what it is. And that is a big problem. And obviously, when you bring, the whole subculture of rap music and stuff like that into it, a lot of it equates to that, honestly, as well, because they fucking rap about the shit all the time in these random videos, dude, and these random songs, etc., where they're just like, yeah, be a criminal piece of shit, and you're gonna get all the pussy, basically. You're gonna get the money and you're gonna get the bitches and stuff like that, and it becomes a whole fucking problem then. And it's just this fucked up culture that, unfortunately, does in a lot of cases relate back to the prison system again. Because just like this Charles guy was saying, he was talking about the, pants sagging and shit like that in the prison system that he was in there in Texas for a decade. And then was like, oh, I can't wait to get out of prison here so I can get rid of this shit in my life, whatever the case be. Comes out here to the, real world again. And it's fucking flipped the subculture there into modern day society, then, is what it is. And that's the problem right there entirely, dude, is that we're letting shit like that dictate the lives and our society as a whole, is what it is. When it should be the shit that gets stomped the fuck out immediately, is what it is. And that's the problem, really, honestly, is that, there are so many of these people who, again, keep coming out of the revolving door system, is what it is, that should never see the light of day ever again. And I'll go as far as to say right now, dude, we need to have one strike laws in the books for pedophiles right now. If you're going to hurt a child, death penalty immediately. If you're going to do shit like that, where you get caught with, thousands and thousands of files of child porn, life imprisonment. And it's as simple as that, really. And it should be similar fucking things like that across the board, is what it would be. Where maybe it's a 3 strikes law coming back, where it would be like hardcore offenses and stuff like that for like the 3 strikes, not just like, some like petty ass shit or whatever the case be. Or remember there was a movie back in the day, I think it was called 3 Strikes, if I'm not mistaken. It was basically somebody that had like 2 strikes or whatever, and his buddy like picked him up from prison in a stolen car or something like that, and he's like, I can't get my 3rd strike, bro. And in that case, like, that was one of those things where it would be like, that is some bullshit, honestly. And no, that guy should still be a 2-striker then. Like, he had no fucking clue his buddy was picking him up in a stolen vehicle is what it was, But again, it goes back to that whole thing where it's like, sort of like guilty by association kind of shit. And it's basically the friends you keep kind of thing. And I think that's the problem with a lot of our society right now, is it's like, you have these groups of individuals that will breed the worst of society and then sit there and basically become the loudest voice on the planet, is what it is, and become these mob mentalities. And yet, meanwhile, we have other groups in this country right now where we have the best of the best dealing with these criminals, and we're not standing up for them. Specifically, when I talk about that, I'm talking about Daniel Penny. It's bullshit right now that Daniel Penny is sitting in a New York prison system currently when he stopped a violent repeat offender who had 44 fucking arrests on his record, and that piece of shit Jordan Neely. And it wasn't just Penny either. There was multiple other dudes involved with the subduing of Jordan Neely that day on that subway train. But yet, who does the fucking media make it about? Oh, it's got to be the white on black thing now. And that is honestly why the mainstream media should never be covering the freedom of the press ever again, is what it is, because they're not press anymore. They have been propagandists in this country for at least 5 decades now with Operation Mockingbird. And that is my biggest problem with the whole thing right now, is that these fucking piece of shit, fake ass, fake news motherfuckers are still covering the freedom of the press, and they're not journalists anymore. They have been propagandists for decades. And they will keep pushing the shit. And they understand that what are the two things that work? Fear and happiness. And what do they always push? Fucking fear on everything. You know, going back to 2020 lockdown stuff, dude. Every fucking day, every fucking minute, every fucking hour with these motherfuckers. Oh, you gotta put on the mask. Oh, you gotta get the jabs. And it's like, shut the fuck up, man. Seriously. But that was the problem. You had these people across our society at the time, a lot of elderly folks that watched that garbage like CNN and MSNBC and stuff like that, that were just fucking eating it up, just spoon feeding it right into their mouths, dude. And this is the problem, is that, over 2 years later now, we're still letting these fuckers get away with it, dude. Even though they've committed hardcore crimes against humanity at this point in history. And they should all be charged accordingly for that. And that is what my biggest problem is right now currently, is that you have all these people doing that kind of shit and not being brought up on charges. And then meanwhile, on the flip side of things, you'll have people, discuss like potentially racial segregation again is what it is, which I'm not down for that personally. Mostly because I don't think it would ever be able to be implemented as what it is. Honestly, I don't think it would be ever, just because of the fact you would have too many people being against it. It would be then. And plus, you'd obviously have, and if anybody ever tried this, would it be basically having them screaming racist, 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 what it is. Actually, that was one, and going back to that actual thing too, to AK's panel there, you had, I forget which one of the guys brought it up there, but he was saying something about how, like when was the last time you've had like a white dude, actually, just, I think it was white politician in general would be then, talking about like, oh yeah, things they're going to do for like, working class white guys is what it is. It doesn't happen because they would be labeled as a fucking racist, a xenophobe, a white supremacist, all that shit like that's what it is immediately. They would be ostracized like a motherfucker then. And it's a bunch of shit entirely, man. And honestly, it's fucked up that we have gone that far down the rabbit hole now to where you have these idiots thinking, oh, words are violence, and then somehow silence is also violence. Like, what the fuck is that, dude? Seriously, it's complete and utter psychotic insanity from these leftists, man. I was watching a good video this morning, or not this morning, or earlier this afternoon is what it was, after I'd finished the Freedom Friday stream there. And it was, I can't remember what that girl's name is offhand. She's the black chick that works for, I want to say Daily Wire, but I could be wrong about that one. She used to be like a hardcore leftist. And she was talking about Freely Ashley, I believe is what it was. And this is the video itself was from like 9-10 months ago or something like that. And she was discussing how this Ashley girl was saying how, her Freely Ashley herself being an ex-leftist was talking about like the mindset of the left and stuff like that, and how these people will always take it to like, like this crazy thing where they're just like always in peril and stuff like that. And she's right about that. And they'll always sit there, and go on these like things and just like scream at the camera, or scream at you, and just freak out basically. And it kind of goes back to the DNC shill mentality as well. Like people like those two jackasses, Harry Simpson and Chris Moray, who are bought and paid for by the DNC at this point and are proven to be such. Well, they'll sit there and like bitch in the camera about like gun violence is killing Americans. Like, shut the fuck up, child. Like, seriously, shut the fuck up. Adults are speaking. And I think that's the problem with a lot of these little punk asses, dude, is you have these people, and I believe that this chick, the way she was saying it was how it's the algorithms of these social media sites and stuff like that that'll basically put you into that situation where it'll just keep suggesting like the most hardcore, insane shit to you is what it is then. Like if you, search out like one video or whatever, it just keeps suggesting those kind of videos to you is what it is then. And the problem with that is, and it's funny to me too that you always have these leftists that'll sit there and make up like fake ass meme stuff, and it's like there was one I saw recently where it was supposed to be like the various like stages of like essentially like white supremacy on the right is what it was, and it was basically like stage one was like Fox News or something like that, and it was like stage two was like MAGA hat wearing, and then it was like stage three was something else, and then like stage four was like swastika tattoos and shit like that, and like all kinds of like Aryan Brotherhood stuff. Oh yeah, speaking of which, that's one thing I did want to mention. That Charles dude, the guy I'm talking about in this whole situation, was even talking about fucking being in like the Texas AB is what it was there in the prison system that he was in for a decade. And what's interesting, right before I left that chat a little bit ago, here is what it was to do this, obviously, is he was mentioning how like a lot of the guys that were part of that or whatever weren't really like full blown white supremacists. They were basically just like, whatever, essentially. And a lot of what he was saying really was, without saying it, and I'll say it like it is, when you look at prison gangs in general, and how a lot of them formed back in the 60s, 70s, etc. Obviously, you had a lot of those gangs that were the original prison gangs and stuff like that, then become 1% motorcycle gangs outside of prison then. And what's interesting though is when you look at the origins of a lot of these different groups and stuff like that, in most cases, the reason that, a white dude or whatever the case be, like a Latino guy or whatever it is, would join up with one of these gangs, or even like an Asian guy for that matter. Let's go ahead and say it like this, right? Like Asian nerd motherfucker somehow gets brought up on charges of like murder or whatever the case be. He's gonna go inside. He's gonna find like the 5 or 6 Asian guys that are all a gang together right now and join them for protection reasons. And that's what it is. It's all safety in numbers in most cases. Whereas meanwhile, when you look at particularly the Sun community, there is what it is. You have these individuals who, whether it be the Bloods, the Crips, or some like offshoot of those gangs and stuff like that, because there's like 18,000 of those gangs now is what it is. It seems like, it's like the 118th Crips or the 114th Bloods or whatever the case be, where it's all like street addresses essentially and shit now. I know Chicago has its own subset too, because I remember talking to Leo about that on one of Honda's chats recently. Like he was talking about the different like it's like different like Lord sets or something, I believe is what it is there in Chicago. And it's stuff that's existed since basically like the old like zoot suit wearing days of like the 19 what was that, like 30s, 40s, somewhere in there. And essentially what it was is that what you have in a lot of these situations is you have guys that'll basically group up together simply for protection reasons or safety and numbers reasons. Whereas they might not actually believe in the cause, they just don't want to get their asses beat by a group of fucking guys in the prison system is what it is. Not blaming it all for that matter. Like why would you? Why would you want to be the one like, lone wolf dude that you're sitting there, leaving with your fucking tray or whatever for breakfast or lunch or whatever the case be, and then you got fucking 10 guys swarming you and taking everything off your damn tray and you get nothing to eat that day? Or why would you want to be the one guy that gets picked on by a whole group of people is what it is? No, you want to be with a bunch of other guys that are going to have your fucking back, at least in theory anyway, and be able to be like, nah, you fuck with me, you're going to fuck with these dudes back here is what it is. Not, oh, you fuck with me and you're just going to fuck me up is what it is then. And I don't know if maybe that's where that Charles guy was trying to come from with the whole like cowardice stuff or what it was, but like, I don't, like the way he came off was just an asshole. He just came off like an arrogant dick is what it was, honestly, dude. So, I don't know. Something to think about right now. And like I said, for me personally, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Just because, it's like, and it's something I've seen for at least a decade now in this country where it's just like, it's like, it's perfectly okay to shit on people as long as the people you're shitting on are white. But yet, if you do it to any other race in this country, it's like, oh my God, now you're a fucking racist. Or, oh my God, you say the wrong thing, and oh, now you're fucking out of the 2A groups and shit now. Which happened to me last year, by the way. I still haven't gotten an apology, by the way, and I'm seriously right now, because coming week looking at pursuing charges now against people, lawsuitable charges right now. So, also, by the way, June 13th, about 10 days now. It'll be a week from Tuesday. Will be the first anniversary of Ohio Patriot Education Network and the first anniversary of Ohio's constitutional carry law going into effect. So I will actually have 2 major announcements that day for some stuff. but we'll wait until then to talk about them because they are some stuff I've been waiting for a few months now to talk about, but I've been, sort of keeping it low key is what it is. But yeah, we'll have two big announcements then to discuss stuff. People might actually know what one of them is already, but we sort of hinted at it a little bit here and there is what it is. But the other one's definitely something you won't know about yet. But anyway, yeah. Either way, I thought it was interesting, and I figured I'd give my 2 cents here on this one. To the panel that AK was doing tonight with them dudes and whatnot, and just discussing different things. And I kind of agree with that Sebastian guy in a lot of cases there that was on that panel, where he was essentially talking about, it's time to sort of save yourself is what it is, or save your, you and your friends and stuff like that. And I think honestly, it's funny to me, going back to a lot of NEH panels and stuff like that. I believe it was Duke the other day mentioned something about that, and he was talking about how, I'm not sure if this was during one of the chats or it was in a back chat, maybe that I was with him in or something, but it was basically him saying about how, like, the older he gets and the further we, go down this sort of like crazy ass roller coaster ride towards, second civil war potentially, the more he's realizing it's pretty much going to be, your immediate family and your immediate friend groups and stuff like that you're going to be with. And that's who you have to basically trust right now, is people that live within your vicinity is what it is there. And I don't disagree with him on that one. That's stuff I've been saying for probably a good 7-8 years on this channel in various iterations and stuff of a lot of videos that are now either deleted or privatized, unfortunately. And the thing is, when you start looking up from that perspective of things, it makes a lot of sense because, it basically comes down to being like, who can you trust? And, in most cases, like, if you have a good family structure is what it is, you can trust your family in most cases. Maybe not like, extended family, like, crazy, like, third, fourth, fifth cousins or something like that you don't really know, but like, yeah, like if you're talking about like immediate family, like, mom, dad, brother, sister, whatever the case be, or even like, first cousins that live within your close proximity and stuff like that, or maybe like an aunt or an uncle or something, or even like first cousins for that matter that may live within, like walking distance of you or something like that. Like that would be your group in a lot of cases, or even just, good neighbors to have is what it is. And that's the one thing I think is funny too, right? Like you look at and going back to the whole like difference between like, major city living versus rural living and stuff. It's funny to me when you have these idiot leftists come out the woodwork and stuff like that in different places like your Columbuses or your Clevelands or whatever the case be. And they'll sit there and do their little rioting and stuff like that, or little marches and claim to be protests and stuff. And then they'll be like, whose streets are streets? But yet they themselves don't even really have community down there. And that's something I've learned recently when I've been looking at the Columbus subreddit quite a bit here in the last like couple weeks now. Is these people want to sit there and claim community and having like some kind of community bond is what it is. Yet most of these motherfuckers, if you would walk up to them that live in an apartment complex and you say, okay, who's your neighbor in 1B or who's your neighbor in 1D or whatever the case be, or who's your neighbor in like 4F or something, I guarantee they wouldn't even know who these fucking people are because they've never even met them is what it is. Or if they did, they met them maybe like one time while they were both in the laundry room doing laundry or something. But that's the thing. They're not friends. They're not people that you would actually know. And I know that for a fact personally because the couple years I lived down in Columbus, you know how many times I met my neighbors down there that were literally like their door was right here and my door was right here? Fucking zero. You know why I didn't care to talk with them or care to actually meet them or make friends with them? Because I knew that studio apartment I was going to live in that year was going to be for a year, for 1 year. And there was no reason to make friends. I was there to do my schoolwork. I was there to go to my classes. And there was no reason to interact with the people, is what it was. And they didn't care to interact with me either, for that matter. Like, nobody from that area interacted with me. Nobody from up top of the fucking building interacted with me at all. Because nobody really cares, dude. There's no real communities in cities, dude. It's why you're so much easier to be robbed in the city because nobody gives a fuck. Hell, I fell down there in that city onto hard-ass concrete, fucked my right knee up permanently over a decade ago. You know when people stop to actually help me up? Again, fucking zero. Because that's how little of a shit major city people actually care about each other. They can see you fucking fall and hurt yourself because you slip and fall on some fucking shitty ass pavement is what it is, trying to catch a bus. and yet not one of them will come to actually help you up. Not one of them will actually even ask you if you need help. No, they'll just keep on walking by. Or they'll just walk in a different direction because they don't give a fuck is what it is. And that's a big problem with our society currently in these major cities, is there is no real community there is what it is. Or if there is, it's like in these little teeny ass suburbs outside of the major cities, what it is then. And even then, it goes back to like smaller groups where you have basically, unfortunately, it goes back to kind of what that Sebastian guy was suggesting there, which is on racial lines, is what it is. You know, like I've said before, where does Allison Russo, a current Ohio State rep, represent there? Upper Arlington, the richest, whitest, leftist fucking neighborhood that is a suburb of Columbus. And it's only because it is so fucking gerrymandered blue down in that shithole that nobody else can ever win. Even if we had third parties, you couldn't even have a third party win. That's why there's no Republicans on the ballot. That's why there's no independents on the ballot. That's why there's nobody on the ballot, dude, except for her ass. She has not won a legitimate race for a state rep seat in this fucking state right now for at least 3 election cycles. But yet she's somehow still a state rep, dude. By default. And the same thing with that fucking piece of shit, Dontavius Jarrell, who's now a second-term state rep. Et cetera, et cetera. None of these people can win legitimately with an actual opponent. They can win though when it's one-horse race, though. Which is exactly what I've said before. We need to have one county, one rep legislation on the books right now in this state, dude. And the same thing with Pennsylvania, for that matter. There is zero reason for either one of these states like this to have 100 to hundreds of people in our state houses when you have less than 100 counties in these states. Is what it is. So, anyway, that's pretty much it for the day, though. I might go back and watch some more Vacay's panel and stuff like that and see exactly what that Charles guy was talking about to begin with there, that I missed out on and stuff like that, to see what his actual prime was. And we might discuss this again in the future for another grandstand or something. I'm not sure yet. But, yeah, we'll be back at some point, though, for some stuff. My eyes are getting really messed up right now because I'm getting very tired. That's what it is. I think I just need to, I honestly think, I'm not even sure if I need to go to sleep is what it is. I think I just need to, like, sit there and rest them for, like, an hour or two is what it is then. Because they're just, like, it's causing me, like, serious blurry issues right now is what it is. So, anyway. That's pretty much where we're at for the day, though, like I said. And we will be back for another one at some point. I'm not sure when yet. I know Corey's surgery got rescheduled for sometime in the future. So it's not going to happen here tomorrow, or it wasn't going to happen here today. Or yesterday, I should say, because yesterday was Friday. So I think he'll be doing his panel tomorrow night, maybe, on his channel here on YouTube. So hopefully I can be part of that then, if nothing else. And then maybe, I don't know. If nothing else, maybe then Honda will take back over or something for the night or something. I don't know. If nothing else, we'll definitely be back on Honda's Rumble chat on Sunday, though, for the Gay Frog stuff. And then most likely next Tuesday. We were supposed to have our fucking Tuesday panel this past week, and that dude's like, oh, no, sorry, did some stuff with the kids and don't want to do it now. And it's like, it's fine, whatever, dude. It would have been nice if he just told us like a couple hours before that, though, is what it is, instead of just being like, oh, no, probably no chat tonight, like an hour later is what it is. And I'm just like, dude, I've been sitting here for an hour waiting for the damn link already, and you just now tell me this shit where you could have said it like 2 fucking hours ago. And I would have been like, okay, cool. Because I could have said something on myself then and done something here. Is what it is, a couple of guys or something. But anyway, it is what it is. You know, unfortunately, they don't. Him and Matt both really don't think ahead like that is what it is. Because if they did, we would be a lot better off and more connected, I think, is what it would be then. But again, it is what it is, man. It's fine. I understand it, obviously. You know, you got life that takes a hold of stuff. And unfortunately, you know, family does take priority a lot of times. Which, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately. Fortunately, family takes priority over, you know, friendships is what it is then, or friend panels is what it would be then. And that should take the back burner, honestly. I'll say it like it is, man. Like, you should be more inclined to be hanging out with family than hanging out with, you know, your internet buddies would be then. But that being said, when one of your internet buddies, you know, has nothing to do that night and is expecting you to, like, do some shit, and he's like, damn it, man. Like, I could have been doing other things now is what it is. So, but yeah, like I said, it is what it is, man. I'm not really angry. I'm just like, you know, again, I'm sort of like half laughing here is what it is, because it's just me joking around, basically, trying to give him shit is what it is then, razz him. all that good stuff. So, anyway, but yeah, either way, I'll be back at some point. I might do something tomorrow afternoon or something like that very early. I really wish I could do the streaming of the gaming again and stuff like that, but unfortunately, like I said, I don't know when it was. It was one of the updates in the last month or so here. You had something happen with that update where it just the interface with StreamYard just doesn't want to work now. It's basically you'll put it on the StreamYard and it'll just fuck it up is what it is then. So it is what it is, man. But either way, I'm out for the day. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you all in the next one.